The cruel and manipulative stepmother always punished the millionaire's daughter when she didn't fulfill her duties. And one day, the little girl hadn't done her homework. The moment the stepmother found out, her blood boiled and she rushed to punish the girl. And this time the punishment was to make the little girl eat all the dog food until the millionaire father arrived just in time and caught the stepmother red-handed. 3 minutes later, what the millionaire does leaves the stepmother very regretful. The Harrington mansion stood in the heart of the city's most exclusive enclave, a monument of marble and glass that reflected the sky with an almost defiant arrogance. To those passing by the tree-lined street, it was a symbol of success, the visible result of the fortune that Arthur Harrington had accumulated over years of shrewd Wall Street investments. The wide windows, always immaculate, promised a life of light and order. But for Lila, only 8 years old, those same windows seemed like glass eyes, silent witnesses to a world where every smile was weighed and every gesture calculated. On that sultry Monday afternoon, the late afternoon sunlight streamed into the living room, cutting the air into golden beams that made the dust motes dance. The girl was sitting on the Persian rug, methodically arranging the ribbons of her favorite doll, while Sonny, a honey-colored golden retriever, rested his head in her lap. Sighing with the cadence of an old friend, Lila felt a nervous flutter in her chest. Tucked away in her backpack with the care of a treasure was the sheet of paper that would decide her fate that week. The Science Project, a miniature solar system featuring styrofoam planets and glitter stars. Simple, but with one crucial requirement: help from an adult. Her father, Arthur, was, as always, absent, absorbed by conference calls, deciding the fate of immense capital and the management of his financial assets. That left Isadora, her stepmother, the woman whose beauty seemed sculpted to adorn the covers of the high-end business magazines her father collected. Isadora was in the garden with 2 neighbors, enjoying afternoon tea. The soft sound of their laughter and the gentle clinking of porcelain reached Lila like a distant, inaccessible melody. Taking a deep breath, she stood up, smoothed down her dress, and walked toward the glass door leading to the garden. Sonny lifted his ears, his tail wagging a silent interrogation. The girl held the project sheet with both hands, the paper already slightly damp from the sweat of her apprehension. The 3 women fell silent as she approached. Isadora turned, a practiced, perfect smile lighting up her face. It was the same smile she used at charity galas, a gesture that promised generosity but never quite reached her eyes. "Yes, darling," she said, her voice a polished velvet. The neighbors watched the interaction. Curious, Lila held out the paper. "It's my science project. My teacher said I need help." Isadora took the sheet with the tips of her fingers, as if handling a delicate piece of crystal. She read the instructions quickly, and her smile widened. "Why, of course I'll help, my love. What a wonderful opportunity for us to spend time together." She stroked Lila's hair, a light, almost ethereal touch that served more for the spectators than for the child. One of the neighbors sighed. "You are such a wonderful mother, Isadora. Little Lila is so lucky." Later, when the night swallowed the garden's colors and the neighbors had gone, Isadora's promise turned to dust. The smile gave way to a neutral, impenetrable expression. "Before the project, we have responsibilities, don't we, Lila? A young lady needs to learn to be organized." First, it was the pile of clean laundry, which Lila had to fold and put away. Next, her father's office bookshelf, which needed to be reorganized by color, a meticulous and endless task. Finally, she had to feed Sonny, scrubbing his stainless steel bowl until it gleamed. Time passed, and weariness weighed on the girl's small shoulders. Her eyes burned. She sat down at the desk. The project materials spread before her, but her eyelids felt like lead. She just wanted Isadora to see her effort, to give her the affection she had promised in front of the others. She fell asleep right there. her cheek pressed against the instruction page, the smell of paper and glue mingling with her frustrated dreams. The last thing she saw before darkness consumed her was Isadora's shadow, cast by the hallway light, a slender, motionless silhouette in the doorway, watching her. The science project, with its cardboard stars and styrofoam planets, lay forgotten, an entire universe that would never be born. The morning light invaded the office without asking permission, waking Lila with a cold touch on her cheek. She straightened up in the chair, her neck aching. In front of her, the solar system remained a pile of white spheres and closed paint pots. The smell of failure seemed to permeate the air. Light footsteps in the hallway made her shrink back. Isadora entered, already impeccably dressed, wearing a floral perfume that contrasted sharply with the heavy atmosphere of the room. She looked at the table, then at Lila, and a sigh of feigned disappointment escaped her lips. "Oh, darling, you didn't do anything. Daddy will be so disappointed." Lila's heart sank. Her father's disappointment was her greatest weakness, the exact point where Isadora's manipulation always found fertile ground. The girl tried to explain, to say she was tired, that the chores had taken all her time, but the words refused to come out. Isadora approached and, with a cutting sweetness, held Sunny's stainless steel bowl, which she had just filled with kibble in the kitchen. "You know, sweetie," she whispered, her voice low so only Lila could hear, "girls who don't finish their homework sometimes have to eat what's left over." A shiver ran down the girl's spine. The threat wasn't literal, she knew. It was something worse. It was the promise of a humiliation that only the two of them would share, a dirty secret that would isolate her further. At the breakfast table, Arthur was already on the phone, gesturing as he talked about the profitability of a new hedge fund. "The cash flow is promising, but I want to see the reports on the last dividends," he told an invisible interlocutor. He barely noticed his daughter, who ate her toast in silence, head bowed. He hung up the phone with an air of triumph and finally smiled at his family. "We got it. That deal is going to net millions in dollars." Isadora smiled back, the perfect wife. "That's wonderful, dear. By the way, we received the invitation to the country club charity dinner today. And guess what? They want you to give the opening speech." Arthur's ego inflated. He was a multi-millionaire whose image as a philanthropist was as important as his net worth. "Excellent. We should all go together. A united family image is crucial," Isadora agreed, giving Lila a meaningful look. "Absolutely. And Lila has been working so hard to be a mature young lady, haven't you, darling?" The girl merely nodded, feeling the weight of that lie. As soon as Arthur's car left the garage, Isadora's true face resurfaced. "Because of your disobedience yesterday, you are grounded. No recess today. After school, you will go straight to the office and stay there until you finish that project." The office, once a refuge of books and stories, transformed into a prison. The metal shelves seemed cold and accusatory, and the ticking of the clock on the wall marked every second of her solitude. The project remained impossible. The instructions called for connecting small LED lights to the planets, something she couldn't do alone. Frustration turned into silent tears. That afternoon at school, her teacher, Mrs. Peterson, noticed the sadness in her eyes. Concerned, she wrote a note and put it in an envelope. "Please deliver this to your parents, Lila. I'd like to talk to them about how we can help you with the project." The note was a small flame of hope. Maybe someone would finally understand, but upon arriving home, while emptying her backpack under Isadora's watchful eye, the stepmother saw the envelope. "What's this?" she asked, her voice casual. Before Lila could answer, she took it, opened it, and read it. Her face remained impassive. With a discreet movement, she slipped the note into her purse, an ace to be played at the right moment. In the hallway, the mansion's housekeeper, an older woman with grey hair and a serene gaze named Maria, watched the scene from afar. She saw how Lila whispered her fears to Sunny, as if the dog were the only one capable of listening. Maria said nothing, but in her heart, a seed of concern began to germinate. That disappeared note was more than a simple message. It was a silent cry for help that had just been suppressed. The week dragged on with the slowness of a storm brewing on the horizon. Each day was a new test of endurance for Lila, a new trial imposed by Isadora under the pretext of discipline. In public, during preparations for the charity dinner, the stepmother was the personification of patience. She rehearsed the 2 sentences Lila was supposed to recite, praising her precocious maturity to anyone who would listen. "Look how dedicated she is," she'd say on the phone to the event organizer. "Arthur and I believe that responsibility is the greatest gift we can give a child." But as soon as the house door closed, the mask fell. Isadora's lessons grew crueler. One morning, Lila's pencil case disappeared. She searched everywhere, desperation growing in her chest. Isadora watched her with calculated calm. "If you were more organized, you wouldn't lose your things. Perhaps some time thinking about it in your room will help you remember." The girl spent the morning locked up, missing the art class she loved so much. Meanwhile, Maria, the housekeeper, continued her silent work. Her eyes, accustomed to seeing dust in corners and small imperfections no one else noticed, also picked up on the sadness accumulating on Lila's shoulders. While cleaning the kitchen, she found the pencil case, carefully hidden behind the silver fruit bowl. It hadn't been a careless mistake by the girl. It had been a deliberate act. Maria's heart tightened. She couldn't confront her employer, as her job was the sole source of income for her family. Challenging Isadora would mean risking everything, but she couldn't stand by either. The next day, after seeing Lila crestfallen again, Maria had an idea. She took a small pad of yellow sticky notes from the office and a pen. In her careful handwriting, she wrote a simple message: "Water the plants first, then homework. You can do it," and discreetly stuck it on the girl's bedroom door. It was a small, almost invisible gesture, but for Lila, that note was like a ray of sunshine on a grey morning. Someone saw her. Someone cared. Inspired by that small kindness, Lila decided to try once more to finish the science project. She spent hours reading the instructions, trying to decipher the electrical diagrams for the LEDs. She managed to assemble the structure, paint the planets, and even sprinkle the glitter to form the galaxies. But the electrical part remained a mystery. The next morning, a torrential rain poured down on the city, wrapping the mansion in a grey veil. It was the day the project was due. Exhausted, Lila fell asleep again over her books, and the wiring remained disconnected. Isadora found her like that. The disappointment on her face, this time, seemed genuine. But it was a theatrical disappointment, calculated for the audience she herself would create. She opened the kitchen window, letting in the sound of the rain and the smell of wet earth. The next-door neighbor, a woman known for her insatiable curiosity, was on her porch, tending to her orchids. Isadora knew she would be there. It was the perfect stage. She called Lila, her voice loud enough to be heard across the fence. "Lila, come here, please." The girl came, her eyes swollen from sleep and suppressed crying. Isadora held Sunny's kibble bowl, full of food. The strong smell of dog food mingled with the rain. "Once again, you failed," she said, her tone balanced between reprimand and the sweetness of someone teaching a difficult lesson. Lila pleaded, her voice trembling. "Please, don't. I tried." The tears she was holding back finally rolled down her face. "I swear I tried." Isadora smiled. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I know you tried, darling, but trying isn't enough. Sometimes we need a more palpable reminder." She brought the bowl closer to the child's lips. The cold metal touched Lila's skin, and a sob escaped her throat. At that exact moment, the sound of a car stopping at the garage entrance cut the tension. Arthur, who had forgotten a crucial envelope containing contracts for a gold business deal, decided to return. Hearing the raised voices coming from the kitchen, he stopped behind one of the porch columns, hidden by the dense foliage, and he saw the scene. His daughter crying, his wife holding the dog bowl against the girl's face. Arthur's world stopped spinning. He saw, but he didn't move. A wave of shock paralyzed him, his mind swirling in a vortex of denial and fear. His instinct screamed at him to go in, snatch the bowl from his wife's hands, and protect Lila. But he didn't move. An invisible force, woven from years of fearing scandal and an obsession with maintaining appearances, glued him to the ground. His mind, accustomed to calculating investment risks and analyzing the stock market, spiraled into panic. What if it was a misunderstanding, a cruel joke? An image like that, captured by a phone and leaked to the press, would destroy not only his businesses, but the charitable foundation that was the pride of his wealth. Doubt, cowardly and paralyzing, overcame him. He stepped back, then another, the sound of his leather shoes muffled by the wet grass. He walked around the side of the house, entered through the front door, and strode firmly to his office, his heart hammering against his ribs. He grabbed the envelope from the desk, the contracts inside now seeming insignificant. As he left, he passed the hallway leading to the kitchen. Lila's crying had stopped. He heard Isadora's voice, soft as silk. "There, darling, the lesson has been learned. Now let's wipe that little face." Arthur quickened his pace, closed the door behind him, and got into the car. Only then, in the silence of the luxury vehicle, did he allow himself to crumble. The hands that signed multi-million-dollar deals trembled on the steering wheel, but amidst the chaos of his emotions, something crystallized. The expression on Lila's face, it wasn't the fear of a temporary scolding. It was an ancient, deep terror. A dread that didn't match an isolated correction. He remembered other times, small things he had ignored, the way Lila flinched when Isadora approached, the way her eyes sought approval before every word. The pieces clicked together with a painful sound. Paralysis gave way to cold, calculated fury. He wasn't just a father, he was a strategist who had built a fortune from the ground up. He wouldn't act impulsively. He would act with precision. He grabbed his cell phone. The first call was to Isadora. "Darling, an unforeseen issue came up, an important deal involving a large cash flow and foreign investors. I'll have to spend the night at the office to finalize everything." The lie came out with a frightening ease. The second call was to Marcus, his IT chief, a discreet and loyal man who protected the secrets of his digital empire, including his cryptocurrency applications. "Marcus, I need a favor, personal and urgent. The most valuable asset I possess is at risk." He paused, his voice firm. "I need you to install micro cameras in a few spots in my house. Kitchen, hallway, study room, discreet. No audio in private areas, everything legal. But I need to see what happens when I'm not there." On the other end of the line, a comprehending silence. "Consider it done, sir. I'll be there tonight." "After everyone is asleep." Arthur hung up, the car engine still off. He watched the rain wash the mansion windows, the house that looked like a luxury vault, but had revealed itself to be a prison. The war would not be declared with shouts, but fought in silence, with the patience of someone waiting for the right moment to protect his most precious inheritance. The truth would come out, no matter the cost. Isadora felt the atmosphere of the house change. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible alteration, like the drop in pressure that precedes a storm. Arthur had been different since he returned to get those contracts. Quieter, more absorbed in his cell phone, his eyes scanning stock charts and cryptocurrency quotes with an intensity that seemed forced. He talked about business, about the need to diversify their assets, but his mind seemed to be elsewhere. Isadora's intuition, sharpened by the need to protect her status and the wealth it provided, set off a silent alarm. She didn't know what had changed, but she felt the control she so prized slipping through her fingers. Her response was immediate. Redouble the offensive. but with an even more impeccable sweetness. She needed to build a solid case, a dossier of proof that painted Lila not as a victim, but as a problem child, and herself as the patient, misunderstood stepmother. The first move was the alarm clock. The night before, while Lila slept, Isadora entered her room and set the alarm back 20 minutes. The next morning, the house was already fully operational when the girl woke up in a panic. She rushed to the dining room, hair disheveled and pajamas wrinkled. Arthur was finishing his coffee, and Isadora was reading a magazine, the personification of calm. "Look, who decided to wake up," she said, with an indulgent smile. "I think someone has been sleeping too much. Responsibility starts with being on time, darling." Lila tried to say the alarm didn't go off, but her voice sounded like a lame excuse, even to herself. Arthur looked at her with a hint of disappointment, exactly as Isadora had predicted. The seed of doubt was planted. Later, during rehearsals for the charity dinner, Isadora's performance was masterful. She adjusted the bow in Lila's hair, rehearsed the phrases with angelic patience, and praised her effort to the event organizer. "She is such a sensitive girl," she said, her voice choked with false emotion. "Sometimes discipline seems hard, but it's out of love. We want her to understand the value of all this." The world saw the image she projected, that of a dedicated mother struggling to raise a child amidst a fortune that could easily spoil her. Maria, the housekeeper, saw the truth. She found the alarm clock with the change setting and understood the scheme. The cruelty of the gesture shocked her. Seeing Lila's anguish, who now doubted her own memory, Maria decided that the sticky notes were no longer enough. At a moment when Isadora was on the phone, discussing the profitability of her investment funds, Maria handed Lila a small, hardcover notebook and a pencil. "Write everything down here, my angel," she whispered. "The tasks she gives you, the time you start, the time you finish, so you don't forget. It will be our secret." For Lila, that notebook was more than a diary. It was an anchor, proof that her reality wasn't an invention. But Isadora's eyes missed nothing. Days later, she saw Lila writing in the notebook, hidden behind a pillow. She said nothing, but her calculating gaze connected the dots. Later, she found Maria in the laundry room, the humming of the machines creating a bubble of privacy. Isadora approached, her voice smooth, almost a whisper. "Maria, I immensely appreciate your work and the affection you have for the girl." She paused, the smile disappearing from her face. "But it is fundamental that everyone fulfills their role. Interfering in a child's education is a very serious matter. You know, after the club event, I'm thinking of making some adjustments to the staff, re-evaluating positions." The threat hung in the air, cold and unforgiving. Maria felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. The notebook, which was supposed to be a shield for Lila, had just turned into a weapon pointed directly at her. Isadora's threat hovered over the house like a toxic fog. Maria, previously a warm and comforting presence, became a shadow of herself. Her movements were quick, efficient, but her eyes avoided Lila's. The kind smile she used to offer with a glass of milk disappeared, replaced by a mask of tense professionalism. Lila felt the loss of that secret alliance like a physical wound. She stopped writing in the notebook, hiding it deep in her sock drawer. If that little book was the cause of Maria's fear, she preferred to abandon her only refuge rather than risk the woman who had tried to help her. The silence in the mansion grew denser, filled only by the ticking of clocks and the contained sighs of a child who was learning the hardest way, the price of loyalty. Isadora, on the other hand, flourished in that rarefied atmosphere. With Maria neutralized, she felt more confident than ever. She believed she had cut Lila's only lifeline, leaving her completely isolated and easier to mold. One afternoon, while Lila was struggling to solve a math problem, Isadora entered the study room. The girl looked up, apprehension visible on her face. Isadora smiled, a gesture devoid of any warmth. "Still having difficulties?" Perhaps you need an incentive to concentrate. She bent down and picked up Sonny's metal bowl, which was empty by the door. She didn't say a word. She just held the polished object, slowly bringing it closer to the girl's face. Lila's distorted reflection trembled on the stainless steel surface. "Remember," Isadora whispered, "effort needs to be visible." The icy terror climbed Lila's spine, a silent, paralyzing fear. An hour later, Isadora's transformation was complete. With her hair perfectly styled and wearing a silk dress, she called Lila to the garden. "Come on, darling, a big smile for Mommy." She pulled the girl into a tight hug, her cell phone positioned for a selfie. The flash fired. In the photo, the two looked like the portrait of happiness, the sunlight gilding the scene. Isadora quickly typed the caption and posted, "My greatest wealth," teaching her that true value is not in the possessions we accumulate, but in the character we build. The complimentary comments immediately began to flood in. Far away, at the top of a skyscraper overlooking the city, Arthur watched everything. On one screen, stock market charts flickered, showing the millions of dollars his capital generated every minute. On the other, the live feed from his house cameras played out. He saw the bowl scene. He saw the pure fear in his daughter's eyes. He saw the calculated coldness of his wife. And then he saw the selfie. He saw the hypocritical caption appear on his screen. His hands, which controlled an empire of business and financial applications, began to tremble. It wasn't rage. It was a visceral pain, the pain of a father who finally saw the monster he had let into his home, into his life. The naked truth was there, in pixels. He slowly closed his laptop, the click echoing in the silence of his office. The storm inside him calmed, giving way to a chilling clarity. He wouldn't explode. He wouldn't confront her. That would only give her a chance to twist the narrative. He looked at the invitation to the charity dinner on his desk. That ballroom, with its amber light and its audience hungry for spectacles, would be the stage. He would use Isadora's own weapon, the obsession with appearances, to destroy her. The week of the charity dinner arrived. The Harrington mansion operated with the precision of a theater before opening night. Florists came and went, leaving a trail of jasmine and white lily perfume. Silverware was polished until it reflected the world with distorted clarity, and the silk dress Lila would wear to the event hung in her room like the costume of a character she didn't want to play. The girl moved through the house like an automaton, responding in monosyllables. Her eyes deep and dull, she repeated the two sentences Isadora had taught her. "Discipline teaches us to value what we have, and I thank my family for guiding me," until the words lost meaning, becoming just empty sounds. For Lila, the world had shrunk, limited by the walls of that opulent house and her stepmother's vigilant gaze. Joy had become a foreign language she no longer remembered how to speak. At school, Mrs. Peterson watched the change with growing alarm. The girl who once participated, who drew with vibrant colors and laughed at the stories told, now sat in the back of the room, a small statue of melancholy. The notes sent received no response. Attempts to talk to Lila were met with frightened silence. The teacher felt in her heart that something was profoundly wrong. This was not the behavior of a child dealing with simple school difficulty, moved by a professional ethic that wouldn't allow her to ignore the signs. She made a decision. Using the school yearbook, she found the name of Arthur Harrington's company. A quick internet search gave her the main office number. She took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and dialed. Arthur was in his office, on the 30th floor, with the city at his feet, a concrete and glass chessboard where he moved his pieces of capital and investment. The call was transferred by his secretary. "Mr. Harrington, this is Mrs. Peterson. From Lila's school. I apologize for calling you at work, but I've been trying to make contact without success." Arthur felt a knot in his stomach. He expected a complaint about grades or behavior. "Yes, teacher." Has something happened? Mrs. Peterson's voice was calm but firm. Sir, I'm concerned about Lila. I sent some notes about the science project, but it wasn't about the grade. It was to have a chance to talk. She seems subdued, sad. The spark in her eyes is gone. The teacher's words fell upon Arthur like a bucket of ice water. It was the external validation, the missing piece in his puzzle of pain and suspicion. The camera images weren't a delusion, weren't an exaggerated interpretation. They were the chronicle of a silent abuse, and the outside world was beginning to notice the consequences. He thanked the teacher, his voice surprisingly steady. Thank you for calling me Mrs. Peterson. You did the right thing. I'll handle this. He hung up the phone and looked out at the city, but didn't see it. His mind worked furiously. The recordings were powerful, but Isadora could claim they were isolated moments, dramatizations to teach a lesson. The teacher's word was strong but subjective. He needed something more, something that recorded the routine, the daily pressure, the methodical cruelty. Then he remembered the notebook. Maria had given Lila a notebook. He had seen it fleetingly in the recordings before the girl hid it. That notebook was the chronology of his daughter's suffering, written in the innocent handwriting of a child. It was the undeniable proof that would connect all the dots. That night, after the mansion lights went out and silence set in, Arthur returned home. He didn't go to his bedroom. With his heart pounding, he crept down the dark hallway toward Lila's room. The door was ajar. He needed to find that diary before it was too late. The moonlight, thin as a silver blade, cut through the darkness of Lila's room, drawing ghostly shapes on the furniture. Arthur stopped at the door, his heart beating a dull, heavy rhythm against his ribs. The air was impregnated with the sweet, innocent scent of childhood, a mix of powder and crayon that hit him like a punch to the stomach. Lila was sleeping, her chest rising and falling gently, one hand resting flat on Sonny's golden fur, who slept at her feet, the loyal guardian. For an instant, Arthur felt like an intruder, a thief in his own house, violating the only sanctuary his daughter still possessed. Guilt gnawed at him. All his fortune, the billions in assets, the deals closed in dollars, seemed like trash compared to the peace he had allowed to be stolen from that little being. He swallowed hard, determination overriding shame. He needed that notebook, moving with the silence of someone who had learned to walk the corridors of power unnoticed. He approached the small dresser. He opened the first drawer, doll clothes, the second, bows and hair ribbons. He felt panic start to rise. What if she had destroyed it? What if Isadora had found it first? He forced himself to think like an 8-year-old. Where would she keep her greatest secret? His gaze fell on the bottom drawer, the sock drawer, a tangle of colors and unmatched pairs. With his fingertips, he delicately sifted through the soft cotton. And then he felt it, the hard, rectangular spine of the notebook. With infinite care, he pulled it out, the object feeling hot in his hand. He retreated out of the room, closing the door with an almost inaudible click, and walked to his office. Under the cold light of the desk lamp, he opened the notebook. Lila's handwriting, round and slightly uncertain, filled the pages. They were not emotional outbursts, but factual records, which made everything even more devastating. Tuesday, Isadora asked me to organize the books by color. Started at 7 p.m., finished at 9 p.m., didn't have time for homework. Wednesday, my pencil case disappeared. She said I was disorganized and left me in the room. Friday, the bowl again. I cried. She said it was for me to learn not to fail. On one of the pages, a small dark smudge blurred the ink. A tear. Arthur closed his eyes. Every word was a liability on his emotional balance sheet, an unpayable debt. The net worth of his love for his daughter was in ruins. That small notebook was the accounting of the cruelty he, in his blind trust, had allowed. The pain turned into cold fury. He picked up the phone and called Marcus. "Marcus, I need you. Bring the projection equipment to the club on the night of the dinner, and prepare to scan and digitize some pages of a diary." While Arthur detailed his plan, the light under his office door spilled into the dark hallway. In the master bedroom, Isadora was awake. Arthur's empty spot in the bed bothered her. She had heard him arrive, but he hadn't come to the room. Anxiety, her old enemy, began to chip away at her composure. What was he doing in his office at this hour of the night? The work excuse no longer convinced her. The fear of losing control, of seeing her position and the inheritance she coveted disintegrate, propelled her out of bed. Barefoot, she walked down the silent hallway, following the thread of light. She stopped before the solid wood door. Arthur's voice, muffled but audible, confirming her worst suspicions. He was plotting something. With a pounding heart, she reached out and placed her fingers on the cold metal doorknob. The cold metal doorknob chilled Isadora's palm. For a second, her instinct was to turn it, confront Arthur, demand an explanation. But the calculator within her, the woman who navigated the treacherous waters of high society with the precision of a shark, restrained her. Direct confrontation was for amateurs. The real war was won with information. She pulled her hand back, pressed her ear against the cold, polished wood of the door, and concentrated. Arthur's voice was a low murmur, but some words escaped. Sharp as glass shards. Projection on the side screen. Pages of the diary, digitize. The club, during the speech. A shiver, more intense than any threat with a dog bowl, ran through her body. Diary. Projection. Speech. The pieces clicked together with dizzying speed. He knew. He didn't just know. He was planning a public humiliation, a spectacle of justice that would destroy her in front of the very audience she had worked so hard to captivate. She moved away from the door, walking like a ghost down the hallway. The initial rage gave way to icy panic, which in turn transformed into a fierce determination. Years of planning, of forced smiles, of charity dinners, all to consolidate her place in that world of wealth and power, would not be undone by a child's notebook and a sentimental husband. Her assets, her security, her future, everything was at stake. In her closet, a sanctuary of silks and leathers, she sat in front of her vanity and picked up her tablet. The face that stared back at her in the mirror was a mask of calm, but her eyes shone with the intensity of someone preparing for battle. She opened the secret photo gallery on her device. There they were, Mrs. Peterson's notes, photographed in high resolution, her insurance policy. If Arthur wanted to play with evidence, she would play better. He had a diary. She had a teacher's word, or rather, the distorted version she would create. With the skill of someone accustomed to manipulating images for social media, she began to work. Using an editing app, she cropped words, adjusted phrases, and changed the context. The teacher's genuine concern was transformed into fabricated complaints. "I'd like to talk to them about how we can help" became, "I'd like to discuss her behavior." The phrase, "she seems subdued and sad," was cleverly edited to look like her difficulty concentrating has been a problem. She created a trail of false evidence, a narrative that painted Lila as an unstable and fanciful child, and herself as the stepmother who was trying, unsuccessfully, to enforce limits. Meanwhile, in the office, Arthur ended the call with Marcus. He held Lila's notebook as if it were the most important document of his life, more valuable than any stock certificate or treasury bill. Those pages were the proof of his family's failure, but also the key to its reconstruction. With a reverent care, he walked to the steel safe built into the wall, hidden behind an oil painting. He spun the combination, the sound of metallic clicks echoing in the silence. He placed the notebook next to a folder containing the titles of his most precious assets and locked the door. He felt a somber relief. The evidence was safe. His plan, he believed, was foolproof. protected by the element of surprise. He had no idea that just meters away, his wife had just forged the weapon for the counterattack. Isadora saved the last altered image, a thin, dangerous smile curving her lips. She now had her own dossier. Let the dinner come. Let the speech come. She was ready. The days leading up to the charity dinner were marked by an ominous calm. Arthur and Isadora moved through the mansion like two actors in a play whose ending they already knew, but had to stage until the final act. He was the attentive husband, discussing the color of the tie that would match her dress. She was the devoted wife, ensuring every detail of the family's participation in the event was impeccable. Smiles were exchanged, courtesies maintained, but beneath the polished surface, a high-voltage current flowed, invisible and deadly. Lila, caught in the middle of that deafening silence, felt the pressure crush her. She saw the way her father looked at her, with a sadness in his eyes that she didn't understand, and she saw the way Isadora touched her, with a sweetness that seemed colder than ever. The girl retreated into herself, convinced that she was the cause of that strange, heavy peace. The night of the event arrived, dressing the city in a veil of warm lights and expectations. The country club ballroom was a sea of silk, jewels, and whispers. The smell of jasmine mixed with the clinking of crystal glasses and the gleam of polished silver. Isadora was in her element, navigating the groups, receiving compliments, her smile radiant, the epitome of a billionaire philanthropist's wife. Arthur was by her side, a contained smile on his face, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, while inside he counted the minutes. Lila, in her blue silk dress, felt like a porcelain doll, fragile and exposed. The two sentences she was supposed to say echoed in her mind, a meaningless mantra. As the guests took their seats, an unexpected moment broke the carefully planned script. Mrs. Peterson, who had been invited as a representative of the school benefiting from the event, approached Arthur in the entrance hall. Her expression was one of genuine concern. "Mr. Harrington, good evening. Forgive me for bothering you, but I needed to speak with you." Arthur felt a chill. Had Isadora tried something? "Teacher, please, tell me." With tact and discretion, Mrs. Peterson spoke. "I just wanted to say, personally, that my concern for Lila was about her well-being, not her performance. Children give us signals, and I felt she was asking for help." The lack of response to my notes made me even more apprehensive. Arthur listened to her, the confirmation coming from an impartial source, solidifying his resolution. "You have no idea how much your attitude means. Teacher, thank you. Truly." The master of ceremonies announced the opening speech. Arthur stepped onto the stage, Lila's notebook in an inner jacket pocket, his heart pounding. Isadora watched him from the main table, a proud smile on her face. Her hand resting on Lila's arm, Arthur approached the microphone, looked at the audience, and began, "Good evening. It is an honor to be here." He thanked the organizers, the sponsors. He praised the club's charitable work. Then he paused. "Tonight, I'd like to talk about a different kind of investment, one that generates no profit, dividends, or interest. I'd like to talk about investing in the truth." The audience fell silent, intrigued. Isadora felt the first shiver of alarm. The side screen, previously displaying the event logo, flickered and changed. The first image appeared, a high-resolution photo of Lila's notebook, the page where it was written, "The bowl again." I cried. The sound of glasses stopped, the buzzing ceased. All eyes turned to the screen, and then to Isadora. Her mask, so carefully constructed, began to crack. The air in the ballroom became thin, the tension rising to an almost unbearable level. The show had only just begun. The silence in the ballroom was so absolute that the electric hum of the projector sounded like a scream. Hundreds of pairs of eyes, previously filled with admiration for Isadora, now stared at her with a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. Her smile froze, a plaster relic on a face that was quickly losing color. For an instant, time stopped. Then, like a wind-up doll, she moved. She stood up, her hand on her chest in a rehearsed gesture of outrage. "What is this, Arthur? Is this a joke in terribly poor taste?" Her voice, usually controlled velvet, came out a tone higher, with a note of hysteria. It was an educational exercise. The bowl was empty. We were teaching responsibility in a playful way. The words tumbled out, desperate to fill the accusatory void, but no one seemed convinced. The air was too heavy with the image of that childish handwriting. Arthur remained motionless on the stage. He didn't answer. He just gave a discreet signal to Marcus, who was in the sound booth. The image of the notebook disappeared, replaced by a video. Silent, grainy, but terribly clear. The kitchen camera. There was Isadora, holding the bowl close to Lila's face. The girl's expression was pure terror. A second later, the video cut to the next scene. Recorded minutes later in the garden, Isadora, radiant, hugging the same child for the selfie, the hypocritical caption about character briefly appearing on the screen. The contrast was brutal, undeniable. A collective murmur ran through the ballroom, the sound of a reputation disintegrating. Isadora felt the ground disappear, but the fighter within her, the woman who saw the loss of that luxurious life as a fate worse than death, landed her final blow. "He's manipulating you," she shouted, her voice now shrill. She grabbed her tablet from the table. The girl, she has issues. She fantasizes, makes up stories. I have proof. Her own teacher was constantly complaining. With trembling fingers, she activated the wireless connection to the projector. The doctored images of Mrs. Peterson's notes appeared on the screen, phrases out of context, words manipulated to paint Lila as a problematic student. "Look, the teacher complaining about her behavior. It's all the invention of a spoiled child who won't accept discipline." For a moment, a fraction of a second, doubt hung in the air. The narrative was plausible enough for the audience that loved a good drama. But Arthur was prepared. He gave another signal. Isadora's tablet image was replaced by a laptop. Marcus appeared on stage, next to Arthur, a calm man with glasses. "Good evening," he said, his professional voice cutting through the tension. "As a digital security specialist, I can confirm that these images have been tampered with." On the screen, he demonstrated, side by side, the original photos of the notes, which Arthur had obtained directly from the school that afternoon, and Isadora's versions. He highlighted the inconsistencies in the font, the irregular spacing. "It is an amateur forgery," he concluded, with devastating simplicity. The blow was final. Isadora looked at the screen, then at the audience, her face a mask of defeat. It was then that Arthur saw, at a corner table, one of his most important partners, a man whose trust was the basis of a fund worth hundreds of millions of dollars, shake his head in disapproval, stand up, and discreetly leave the ballroom. The victory came at a price. That gesture meant the loss of a contract, a dent in his business, a stain on his reputation as a man who kept his private life separate from his capital. Silence returned, but this time it was the silence of a verdict. Isadora was alone, exposed under the stage lights, the weight of hundreds of judgments crushing her. The drive back home was made in a dense, heavy silence. Arthur drove, the city lights passing as indecipherable blurs. Next to him, Lila was huddled in the seatbelt feeling like a loose, insufficient hug. She didn't understand the complexity of what had happened, the nuances of public humiliation, or the impact on her father's business. What she understood was that her secret, her shame, had been exposed on a giant screen for everyone to see. The mansion welcomed them with a ghostly silence. The lights were on, but the house felt empty, stripped of the tense energy Isadora always imposed. In less than half an hour, a discreet car pulled up outside. Isadora came down the stairs, carrying 2 suitcases. Her face was pale, but her makeup was impeccable. She didn't look at Arthur or Lila. She spoke to the driver, her voice cold and controlled. "Take these to the hotel." And then, without a word of goodbye, she was gone. The click of the door closing echoed through the marble hall, the final sound of a chapter ending. Arthur knelt in front of Lila. He didn't know what to say. All the words he used to command meetings and close deals seemed useless, so he just waited. After a long moment, the girl raised her eyes. "Everyone saw," she whispered, her voice choked. "Now everyone knows." Arthur felt his heart break. He guided her by the hand to the kitchen, the stage of so many of her silent anxieties. Sunny's stainless steel bowl was on the floor, near the door. Lila stopped and stared at it, the metallic symbol of her fear. With a courage that surprised herself, she bent down and picked it up with both hands. She felt the cold metal, heard the rattling of the dry kibble still inside, and the memories came in an overwhelming wave. Seeing the tremor in his daughter's hands, Arthur knelt beside her, bringing himself to her level, not as the billionaire owner of the house, but as a father who was finally present. With infinite delicacy, he took the bowl from her hands and placed it on the floor, next to Sunny. Then he looked into Lila's eyes, his soul exposed. "This," he said, his voice firm but filled with contained emotion, "belongs to our friend, not to a child. In this house, no one will ever confuse love with shame again." It was the permission she needed. The sob she had been swallowing for weeks erupted, a loud, painful sound that filled the kitchen. They were tears of fear, loneliness, and humiliation. Arthur said nothing else. He just wrapped her in his arms and held her tight, letting her cry, her small body trembling against his. There was no magic solution. There was only presence, the warmth of an embrace that promised security, a safe harbor after the storm. The next morning, Arthur summoned Maria to the living room. He apologized to her and assured her that her job was more secure than ever, promoting her to house manager. Together, they created a new system for Lila, colorful cards with realistic tasks, with time for play and rewards, a tool of love, not control. Hours later, Arthur's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. He answered, his voice cautious. On the other end of the line, Isadora's voice, cold as steel. "Arthur, I demand to return home immediately. Think about your image. This separation will only tarnish your reputation and hurt your assets." Arthur held the phone, Isadora's voice sounding distant and metallic, like an echo of a past he no longer recognized. He looked at Lila, who was in the living room, helping Maria organize the new task cards on a corkboard. There was a card for Feed Sunny, one for Read for 20 minutes, and one for Play in the Garden. They were invitations, not sentences. The answer came to him, clear and unwavering, forged in the fire of pain and regret. "Isadora," he said, his voice low but firm, "this house is now governed by new rules, respect, safety, and transparency. You broke all of them. Your entrance is no longer welcome." He didn't wait for a response. He simply ended the call, the final click of a door that would never open again. Isadora's last gambit failed. The same gate gossip she once manipulated with a maestro's skill turned against her. The story of the charity dinner spread like wildfire, adorned with increasingly sordid details. The club, protective of its own immaculate image, discreetly removed her from all social committees. In a world where appearances were the most valuable currency, she had declared bankruptcy. While Isadora's reputation crumbled, Arthur's trembled. The loss of the contract with the partner who left the dinner was formalized in a terse email, resulting in a significant liability in his investments. It was a financial blow, a reminder that every victory has its cost. But for the first time in years, Arthur felt that his true net worth was growing. He took Lila to a meeting with Mrs. Peterson at school. The teacher welcomed them with a warm smile in a sun-drenched classroom. There, feeling safe, Lila finally spoke about her project. "I don't want to make the planets anymore," she said, her voice small but firm. "I want to make something useful." And then she described her idea, an automatic pet feeder that only releases food at scheduled times. Arthur and Mrs. Peterson exchanged glances, amazed by the resilience of that small soul. The project, which had been born as a tool of humiliation, was being transformed into a symbol of healthy boundaries. In the following days, Arthur's office, once a cold place of business and solitude, transformed into an invention workshop. Father and daughter worked together, soldering wires, programming a small timer, and assembling the structure. Maria brought snacks, and Sonny watched everything curiously, as if understanding that this strange object was being built in his honor. Finally, the prototype was ready. It was a simple box with a kibble compartment and a digital timer. When the program time arrived, a small flap opened, and the food dropped into the bowl. But the genius was in the detail, Lila insisted on adding. A small voice recorder that, before releasing the food, emitted an audible warning in her own voice. Homework first, then the friend's food. It was her pain transformed into purpose. It was her voice reclaiming power. Arthur looked at his daughter, who was smiling for the first time in weeks, a genuine smile that reached her bright eyes, and knew that the most valuable inheritance he could leave her was not stored in funds or treasury bills, but in that moment of creation and healing. The house was finally becoming a home. The Sunday morning sun poured a golden light over the garden, making the dew on the rose petals sparkle like small diamonds. The air smelled of freshly cut grass, fresh coffee, and a new beginning. On the porch, a table was set, not with the rigid formality of before, but with the simplicity of a home. There was a pile of pancakes, a pitcher of orange juice, and 3 mugs. Arthur, Lila, and Maria were having breakfast together, while Sonny rested his ears on the girl's feet, a satisfied guardian. Lila's laughter, a sound that had been absent for so long, now bubbled freely as she told Maria about a bird she had seen in the garden. Arthur watched the scene, his heart overflowing with a type of wealth that none of his stock market investments could ever provide. He had lost a multi-million-dollar deal, and his name was at the center of a hurricane of gossip. But looking at his daughter's illuminated face, he felt like the most billionaire man in the world. That was his true profit, the dividends of a belated courage. After breakfast, while Maria cleared the plates, humming a soft tune, Arthur called Lila close to a stone bench under the shade of an oak tree. He sat down and settled her beside him. "Lila," he began, his voice soft, "I have something for you." He pulled a small dessert spoon from his pocket, made of silver, with a delicate blue ribbon tied to the handle. The polished surface reflected the girl's curious face. "This is the new key to our house," he said. "It doesn't open doors, but it sets a rule that will never be broken again." He placed the spoon in her palm, his fingers enclosing hers for a moment. "From today on, in this house, only what is good for you enters, only what is sweet. The bitterness, the shame, the fear, all that stays outside the gate. This spoon is to remind you that you only deserve to taste the good side of life." Lila looked from the spoon to her father's face. Her eyes, once haunted, were now clear. She said nothing. She just squeezed the spoon tightly and gave her father a tight hug, an embrace that said everything. Later, in her room, she opened a small wooden box where she kept her treasures, a seashell, an exotic feather, and a heart-shaped stone. With ceremonial care, she placed the small silver spoon next to them and closed the lid. The symbol of the new covenant was safe, guarded alongside the things she considered precious. The mansion, once a showcase of appearances, had finally become a sanctuary. The garden was no longer a stage for curious neighbors, but a place for shared breakfasts. The office, once cold and impersonal, now had Lila's colorful drawings taped to the wall. The scars still existed, but they were finally being bathed in sunlight, transforming into reminders of a battle won. Love, this time, proved to be the only asset that truly mattered.